if you flip a coin, they want to know what are the possible outcomes. Actually, it's flip a coin and roll a die. So what they're talking about is a coin that has heads or tails, and then obviously a die is like one dice, right? Like we're used to calling them dice, but it's really something that's got six-sided figures. So the way that we figure that out is the first thing that we do is we consider what are the options for the coin flip, and then this will help us. This is what we call a sample space. So there are two options. We could have heads, or we could have tails. So those are the only two possible outcomes for a coin. Now, if I flip heads and I roll the dice, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 possible outcomes. Now, if I roll heads, if I get tails for the coin, then my outcomes for the die are going to be the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now, if I were to write out the sample space, the sample space are all the possible outcomes that we could get. And it's really easy to do. I'm going to say H1, in other words, I could get heads and then 1, right? And or I could get heads and then roll a 2, or I could get heads and then roll a 3. I could get heads and then roll a 4. I could get heads, roll a 5. I could get heads and then roll a 6. I could get tails, roll a 1, and then tails, roll a 2. Tails, roll a 3. Tails, roll a 4. Tails, and then roll a 5. And then tails, and then roll a 6. Now, if you count that up, that's 12 possible outcomes, but I want you to remember that this had 2 possible outcomes and this had 6 possible outcomes. And so I had 2 times 6, which equals 12. And then I had 12 outcomes here. Now, this isn't always the case. Sometimes there's some factors. They might say, well, what are the possible outcomes if you roll heads, or if you flip heads, and then you roll, a die. Okay? So just real quick, if I wanted to find the possible outcomes for one coin flip and rolling a die, then I consider the 2 options for the coin flip, which are heads or tails, and then the 6 different options. Now, unless they specify otherwise, that would be 2 possible outcomes times 6 possible outcomes, which gives you a total of 12 possible outcomes. And then if you want to know what the sample space is, you just choose or list the first 2 outcomes and then branch out and then figure out what the other outcomes are. And then we have 12 possible combinations of heads, tails, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.